But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright.
Welcome along to NUFC Matters again. This is me, Steve Wraith. It is Those Were the Days, and it is that show where we hand over to George Mitchell. Good morning, George. What year are we looking at today?
87-88, Steve.
87-88. And of course, the last show, I got ahead of myself. I was thinking this was a bad year, but actually it's not so bad. So, George, I'll hand it over to you, and you can tell us why.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you. And as I usually do, just to put things in perspective, when the music of the time was Groovy Kind of Love. Phil Collins was number one. Don't Worry, Be Happy. Sweet Child of Mine, Guns N' Roses. And Desire from U2. It's interesting, the Guns N' Roses one strikes a chord because there used to be a young man lived in this house who liked Guns N' Roses. And the films, well, pictures, go to the pictures, you'd see The Rain Man, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Coming to America, a big Eddie Murphy one, and then one of my favourites, Crocodile Dundee 2. With sequels, this is one of the sequels I felt was better than the original Crocodile Dundee 2. But anyway, as I say, a great film and some good music. In the previous season, when he took over, Willie McFall made all sorts of statements, which I think came back to haunt him. Well, same on this season as well. He brings in Mirandinha because we've lost Peter Beardsley, and he makes the mistake of saying, well, Mirandinha is the new Peter Beardsley. Big mistake, because he was a tidy, nice player, had lots of good qualities, but he was never, ever going to be a Peter Beardsley. And he brought in some other people who I'm sure he regretted. For example, he brought in Glyn Hodges from Wimbledon, Mirandinha. Michael O'Neill from Coleraine was a great buy. He brought Anthony Loma up from the juniors. Now, that's the one that has a touch for me, because Anthony was in the same class at the same school as my son Neil. Archie Gourley, Tommy Wright, the goalkeeper from Linfield, and John Robertson from Hearts. And it's with Robertson and Hodges that I want to start with. John Robertson signed one day and went back to Hearts the next day because he was homesick, he claimed. I don't think the check must have got exchanged. And Glyn Hodges, well, he played a few games and then suddenly didn't pronounce that he didn't like playing at Newcastle. It was like playing in a pressure cooker. So, not the best start for Willie this season, but here we go. As always, start with a range of friendlies. And we played Brøndby in Scandinavia as a start. Hearts away and Scarborough away were first were friendlies that we used to warm up, and then we went into the first league game, which was a tough one against Tottenham Hotspur, and it was never going to be easy. Willie McFall sets off with this 11. He's brought Gary Kelly into goal. He's got an experiment to play Neil MacDonald at right back. John Bailey, David McCreary, Peter Jackson, Glenn Roder, which is established back three from the previous year. Darren Jackson, Paul Gascoigne, Paul Goddard, Kenny Wharton, and the very same Glyn Hodges. Tottenham now got Dave Pleat as their manager, and the team of all talents, 27,000 at the game. Ray Clements, Chris Fairclough, Richard Goff, Michael Thomas, Gary Mabbott, Gary Stevens, Paul Allen, Steve Hodge, Johnny Medgood, who's they've just bought from Nottingham Forest, and of course Chris Waddle, who we know well, and Clive Allen. A very talented side. We go down with the hope that the team will have a go. Well, they do have a go, but unfortunately they leave themselves wide open in the first half hour, the game's over as far as we're concerned. And there's Paul Gascoigne in action. Within 20 minutes, Clive Allen scores. 21 minutes, 25, Chris Waddle scores. In 33 minutes, Steve Hodge scores. So we're going at half-time 3-0 down. And I think the fans are waiting to see if we get a shellacking in the second half. But at least they come out with a bit of fight. And David McCreary, for example, and others really give this game a go. And on 62 minutes, he scores what turned out to be a consolation goal in a game which the second half, they did try to turn it around, but still lost 3-1. But can't say it was a huge surprise, but the manner of it being over so quickly was, I think, disappointing more than else. The second game is also an away game on the. That was a Wednesday game. Was started with Tottenham. This is the next Saturday game against Sheffield Wednesday. Promoted together, and throughout the games that we play together, always very close, always very tough, and so we go to Sheffield, and Willie McFall, as he's done before, plays an unchanged team. Howard Wilkinson still Sheffield's manager, and his team is one with some familiar names in, like Mel Sterling, Steve McCall, Larry Main, Nigel Worthington, Gary Mexon, who we get to know, David Hurst, they got from Everton, and Lee Chapman, the big blonde centre forward, who's scoring goals for Toffee for Sheffield Wednesday. A good, entertaining game as always with these two sides. Not a lot of chances, but in the first half there's only one, and it falls to Darren Jackson on 18 minutes, and he slots the ball home. And we get 1-0 in the lead, and that's the way it stays till half-time. Second half was good, but despite both sides hitting the woodwork, neither looked like scoring, and we ran out at the end as 1-0 winners, which was a good start to our away campaign and a healthy boost to our league position. So the next game, we're at home to Forest and Nottingham Forest, and that win at Sheffield makes people think, well, is there something in this? 20,100 at the game, and Willie McFall plays virtually the same side, except now we're going to use two substitutes. And partway through the game, Andy Thomas comes on to Paul Goddard, and John Anderson comes on to Kenny Wharton. Clough's still the manager of Forest, and they have lots of names that are familiar in their side. Hans Seeger's a Dutch goalkeeper. Stuart Pearce, of course, who's a good friend of Newcastle. Des Walker, Neil Webb, Nigel Clough, the son of the manager, Paul Wilkinson, Lee Glover, and on the left side, Franz Carr, who became one of our own players. It's a good game, as it usually is against Forest. Sadly, on just before half-time, a clever piece of play by Forest down the left side by Franz Carr, combining with Nigel Clough, and Nigel Clough turns it into a goal just before the whistle goes for half-time. So that's 1-0 to Forest. And the second half is end-to-end stuff, both sides hitting the, and that's Gaza against Forest. That's Gaza hitting the, Gaza after half-time. They all had a go, but despite hitting the post, the bar, and everything else, it stayed 1-0 to Forest, and it was a good game, but just annoying to get such a defeat, which we could have done without. We're now off the next game, off to Norwich City, and Carrow Road, 17,000 at the game. Ken Brown's their manager, former West Ham player, and they've a good footballing side. Introduced a new goalkeeper called Bryn Gunn. He was with them for a long time, Bryn Gunn, and he features for quite a long time as their goalkeeper. And names in the team that we know, well, Steve Bruce is a name we know. Mark Bowen, Mike Phelan, they got from Manchester United. And then they've introduced a right winger called Roel Fox, who's somebody we get to know very well. Ian Crook, Kevin Drinkall, who we every time I see that name, I expect a goal coming from him. As everywhere he's played, he's been a thorn in our side. Willie McFall sends an unchanged team. Thomas McDonald, Wharton, McCreary, Jackson, Roder, Darren Jackson, Paul Gascoigne, Mirandina, John Anderson and Glyn Hodges. William experimenting with this idea of John Anderson playing in midfield, but how successful it is, I mean, I leave to other people to decide. It's a good end-to-end game, 0-0 at half time, but it could have been a couple of goals each by the way they were playing. And then out of the blue on 73 minutes, Wayne Biggins, their big forward, scores from a corner on 73 minutes. And people are starting to, I know that fans that went there were starting to think, well, this is going to be a 1-0 defeat. But lo and behold, a couple of minutes after Biggins scores, we get a corner, and Peter Jackson returns the compliment by making it 1-1 for Newcastle. So a decent draw away to Norwich, and making us move in the right direction in the league table. So we're home to Wimbledon, and the crazy gang, as they were called in those days. Never easy against them. All sorts of things happened with them, and 23,000 at the game. Willie McFall has the luxury of fielding an unchanged team again, and of course Glyn Hodges was playing against his old team. Bobby Gould's the manager of Wimbledon, of the crazy gang, and Dave Besant, the goalkeeper, who we know, Andy Thorne, who we get to know here, Laurie Sanchez, Dennis Wise, who we get to know for totally the wrong reasons, and Andy Sayre and John Fashanu, who would price a house now these days. Alan Cork, who was a tricky midfielder and sometimes winger for them. So it's never easy against them. And lo and behold, it isn't, because on 9 minutes, unfortunately, there's an own goal for Wimbledon, and it's from a corner, and Fashanu challenges Martin Thomas, and unfortunately Martin Thomas punches the ball into his own net. So we're 1-0 down in 9 minutes. We hardly take our breath at that happening when Alan Cork manufactures another one, a solo goal from his left side, and we're 2-0 down at half time, and that's how it stays at 10 minutes, and that's how it stays till half time. Crowd are obviously unsettled, you can imagine, 2-0 down and against the team who should really be challenging more. After the second half, after the half time whistle, Newcastle do give it a go, and they get involved with the game, and it's the pressing by Paul Goddard and Mirandina, which eventually results in Andy Thorne pulling Mirandina down, and Ian McDonald takes a penalty to make it 2-1. Despite having a shots from all angles, we couldn't get an equaliser, so Wimbledon go away 2-1 winners. Next game is one that we face with some trepidation, an away game to Manchester United, and to say that it's with some anxiety we go there is putting it mildly. So Alex Ferguson's the manager, 45,000 at the game, and of course Manchester United with the big stars, Viv Anderson, who they've just bought from Arsenal, the right back, and Kevin Moran, Mike Duxbury, Paul McGrath, the Irish centre-half who played for them for years, Brian McClare, Remy Moses, Jasper Olsen, Brian Robson, Gordon Strachan and Norman Whiteside, a very talented team. Willie McFall has the luxury again of sending out an unchanged team, and the this time has got Brian Tyne and Darren Jackson as substitutes, and David McCreary gets hurt and Brian Tyne goes on for him. Glenn Hodges gets hurt in the second half and Darren Jackson goes on for him. And this is it's a good game. Newcastle don't sit back. They really do have a go at Manchester United, and they're rewarded in 7 minutes when Mirandinha scores a beautiful solo goal from the edge of the penalty area. However, we don't celebrate too long, because within a minute Jesper Olsen's equalised on 8 minutes, and it's even Steven and gets really exciting, because they within on 28 minutes another goal by Mirandinha, another superb drive, which is what he was famous for. He was a really hard hitter of the ball, and we're 2-1 on 21 minutes at Old Trafford. And then lo and behold, just on the kick of half time, Brian McNair gets a penalty because of a foul by Peter Jackson on Jesper Olsen, and we go in half time 2-2. It's ding dong in the second half, and the good thing for us is that Newcastle dig their heels in, and we come away from Old Trafford with a 2-2 draw, which totally unexpected, but it wasn't just a draw; it was the manner of how they played and dug their heels in and had a go for this. So we leave Manchester and we come home to a home game against Liverpool, the team that's been touted by all the pundits to be the next champions. And with the Manchester result, there's a lot of hope that we might get something out of this game if we give it the same go. Referees is a well-known name. Keith Hackett is a name that people will probably remember. So Liverpool come with Kenny Dalglish as manager, and the team, most people remember these names: Grobbelaar Hansen, Mark Lawrenson, Steve Nicol, Barry Venison, Gary Gillespie, Steve Mahon, Ronnie Whelan, Peter Beardsley, who had left us in the summer, made it plain that Willie McFaul was going, and John Barnes and John Aldridge. So there's a star-studded team coming to St James's. Willie McFaul sends out what is basically an unchanged team for 25,000 in the game. The only trouble is we're not. It's a game we're never in. John Barnes is on his form. Peter Beardsley is on form, and basically given with a run around. 20 minutes. Steve Nicol scores. Aldridge scores to make it 2. Steve Nicol scores again just after half time on 47, and then we get back into the game because a foul by Mark Lawrenson on Mirandinha, and we get a penalty, and Neil MacDonald pulls the one back, and it's 3-1. But lo and behold, that doesn't last long, because on 70 minutes, Steve Nicol completes his hat-trick, and Liverpool are 4-1. And that's how it stayed. They ran out with easy winners in the end, but a bit disappointing, but not entirely surprising. We're now in the second round of the League Cup, and we draw Blackpool. First leg is away at Bloomfield Road, 8,000 in the ground, and well, it's a game everybody up here expects that we win. Willie McFaul sends his virtually unchanged team, except that at left back Bailey's injured, and he brings in another youngster who is promoted from the juniors, Brian Tyne, who had quite a good career with us and an even better career when he went away, in the sense that he played lots of games. Blackpool got some familiar names in the side. Barry Siddall, who we remember from playing in goal down the road. Mick Walsh, Paul Jones, Steve Morgan from Burnley, Craig Madden, Tony Cunningham is the name we know because they bought him from us, and a dangerous side, although not expected really to trouble with that much, but trouble with the do, and when you go to an away game or in any game that has a Geordie in it or an ex-Geordie in it, ex-Magpie in it, there's a danger, and the danger's there. Right on half-time, a corner, and guess who's there to meet the corner? But Tony Cunningham, his low-open header, bang, past Gary Kelly, and we're 1-0 down. And that's how it stays. We battered Blackpool in the second half, but never looked like scoring a goal. And come away with a defeat, which is a bit disappointing. Well, more than disappointing, because people genuinely did expect to win this. Anyway, we now come home to a league game against Southampton, which is going to be, as always, against Southampton, a very stylish game because they play a good style of football, and 20,000, just less than 20,000 in the ground, and that reflects on some of the defeats we've had, I think. Willie McFall makes slight changes. He moves John Anderson back to right back, and brings in one of his summer signings, John Cornwell, on the left side, because by now we're hearing that Glyn Hodges wants to go home, wants to go back to Wimbledon, because he doesn't like Newcastle, doesn't like I think, what do they call it, the pressure part of the fans, the intensity of the Newcastle fans. So he goes back in the direction he came from, to play with the crazy gang. Chris Nicol, manager of Southampton, talented team, a goalkeeper that eventually becomes an England goalkeeper, Tim Flowers, and then Kevin Bond, Derek Statham, Graham Baker, Jimmy Chase, Glenn Cockrell, Andy Townsend, Colin Clark, and Danny Wallace. Really, really talented side of mixture of players who are on the up or on the way out. And it's a good game, entertaining game. First half's 0-0, but not because they didn't try, just simply because they would work most of the time. Then on 61 minutes, we get a Mirandinha special, and he scores from well outside the penalty area with a drive that only he could do sometimes. And so we go at 61 minutes, we go 1-0. However, we were slack, and a corner, Colin Clark for Southampton nips in and makes it 1-1. And then just on 75 minutes, and he's been playing well, Paul Goddard scores a goal to make it 2-1. And that's how it stays to the end. Southampton didn't look like they would get back in, and we coped with everything that they did quite comfortably. Next match, we're away to Chelsea, and we know this is going to be a tough game. 22,000 at Stamford Bridge. John Hollins is still their manager, and whole host of names that people might even remember now, like Tony DiRigo, Mickey Hazard, Pat Nevin, Kerry Dixon, Gordon Jury, all very talented players, and Chelsea are playing well and regarded as possible title challengers. Willie McFall goes with an unchanged team, changes the substitutes to Kenny Wharton and Darren Jackson, but otherwise he keeps John Cornwell in, and we go the way we are. And Brian Tinian stayed in as well. Good football game. Within 12 minutes, Chelsea are 1 up. Deflected shot off David McCreary beats Gary Kelly rather, and we're 1-0 down. And this concern that we're in for a run around here, and then big Kerry Dixon on 25 minutes from a corner, unchallenged, in it goes, and we're 2-0 down. So it's a great deal of anxiety that we might end up getting well and truly beat here. However, on 31 minutes, Paul Goddard pulls one back, and we go in at half-time 2-1. with the hope that we might get something out of the game. And certainly in the second half, Newcastle roll their sleeves up and have a go at this game. And it looks like it's going to end up 2-1. But lo and behold, on just before the end of the game, we get a corner. And there's a near post header by who? Kenny Wharton scores another goal. And we get a 2-2 draw, Chelsea, which is really creditable because Chelsea are playing good stuff. And it wasn't lucky that they played hard for it. So anybody that pleases everybody. A 2-2 draw, Chelsea. So we come home on the Wednesday to the second leg of the League Cup against Blackpool. We're only 1-0 down, and but the crowds reflected on what Newcastle fans think about this trophy. 7,000 to watch the second leg. It's St James. It's, you wanted to talk to your neighbour, you'd have to shout because there would be a lot of space between them. Willie McFall takes it seriously though. The whole he turns out his virtually unchanged team. Sadly, halfway through the second half, goalkeeper gets injured, and Willie McFall puts Paul Stevenson in goal off the substitutes bench, which I know mystified lots of people, but apparently in training, Paul Stevenson was quite a decent goalkeeper. Paul Gascoigne gets injured towards the end, and Kenny Wharton comes on as a substitute for him. Blackpool, virtually the same team we played at Bloomfield Road with Barry Siddall in goal, Mick Walsh, Andy McTeer, Mark Taylor, Craig Madden and Tony Cunningham. And, Blackpool set the nerves jangling in the Gallagher corner because on 2 minutes, the mercurial winger they got from Burnley, Steve Morgan, 2 minutes, bang, and Blackpool are 1-0 in the lead. However, Paul Goddard puts that right immediately. 3 minutes, and in we go, equaliser. Then in 12 minutes, Mirandinha settles the nerves by putting with 2-1 in lead, and that's how we stayed half-time. After the half-time whistle, Newcastle set about this game and clearly aren't going to be beaten in this one. And on 59 minutes, Darren Jackson scores a nice goal. And then on 81 minutes, a solo effort by Gaza dribbles through the Blackpool defence and rolls one into the bottom corner. So 4-1, a nice tidy victory for us in the League Cup, which is quite unusual because it's a trophy we have an abysmal record, and that hasn't changed very much. We then come home to a really tough game against Everton, who are again being touted to win the championship again, and 20,000 at the game. Willie McFall sends out his an unchanged team, and Everton come with now got Colin Harvey, another former player, as the manager. Howard Kendall has stood down, and so Colin Harvey though plays virtually the same team as his predecessor would have done. In goal, Bobby Minns, a decent goalkeeper. Gary Stevens, Pat Vandenhouwe, the Dutch fullback, Dave Watson, Kevin Ratcliffe, Ian Snowden, Peter Reid, and Trevor Stephen, Ian Wilson, Adrian Heath, and Graham Sharp, the Scottish centre forward, very dangerous centre forward. And everybody's expecting that this is going to be tough, and Everton aren't going to give it away. Well, it is. The game sets off at 100 miles an hour. And 9 minutes, Ian Snowden, their talented midfielder, puts them in a lead, 9 minutes. And then, lo and behold, some more high-speed action. And Mirandinha equalises for Newcastle on 11 minutes. And that's a couple of action shots, which I found online. 20,000 at the game, but it was a good game and a good 1-1 draw against Everton. Most people went home quite happy with that, because Everton really were a side of all talents at this particular time, and were the current had been the current champions. So we're grateful to get that draw, even though it was at home. And then we pause for a friendly.
No surprise, George. No surprise.
No. It's not far away. It's on a Monday night at Blag Spartans, and they send a team to play in a testimonial for an old Spartans player, and they get a decent crowd. 5,000 at Blag is quite a good crowd. The only trouble is it doesn't do morale much good, because Blag beat with 3-0. And so anyway, that's the season interrupted, and we're back into the league season with a trip to Coventry. And Coventry, a tidy footballing side, good side, always given us trouble in the past. We had a couple of bad defeats the season before. In 19,000 in Highfield Road. John Sillett is now Coventry's manager, ex-Chelsea fullback. And they've changed one or two teams. Brian Burrows in at fullback. Lloyd McGrath, they've got Nicky Pickering, Dave Bennett, Cyril Regis, the very dangerous centre forward, and David Speedy, who they've just brought in from Everton, which was somebody that used to cause us a lot of trouble. Willie McFall sends out virtually, well, it is an unchanged team. The only changes are that he puts John Anderson and Kenny Warden on as substitutes, and both get on, because Cornwall on the left gets injured, and Mirandini has a bit of a pull and comes off, and both Kenny and John Anderson go on. As I said, Cyril Regis was their danger man, and lo and behold, on 18 minutes, he proves it by putting Coventry 1-0 in the lead. But Newcastle don't sit back; they give it a go. And on 25 minutes, Paul Goddard equalises. And then on 36 minutes, Paul Gascoigne puts in the lead. So we go in at half-time 2-1, and hopeful that we might get a result. Well, right to hope, because the second half they play even better, and a young man called Darren Jackson on 67 minutes makes it 3-1. So that's a very tidy win away from home, and everybody's absolutely delighted. We now go to the third round of the League Cup, which is now just a single game. It isn't a two-legger anymore. And we play Wimbledon. And we go to Wimbledon with hopes of making progress. But on this occasion, it's a tough game. It's a really, really tough game. And but then that's the way Wimbledon are. Bobby Gould plays virtually the team that we played before, Besant and Brian Gale, Andy Thorne, names we know, Laurie Sanchez, Carlton Fairweather, Terry Gibson, John Fashanu, and Alan Cork. Willie McFall has an unchanged team and keeps young Brian Tinian still in the team, and John Cornwood's back from injured, so we've got an unchanged team. 34 minutes, John Fashanu makes light of any defending in our penalty area, and heads in an unchallenged header. And for him, he didn't need any asking. He's such a big brute of a man. 34 minutes and bang, he's made we're 1-0 down. And just before half time, Neil MacDonald got brought down by Andy Thorne in the penalty area, and Neil MacDonald steps up to equalise. So we go in 1-1 at half time with the hope we might get something. And the second half really, really is tense. It's end to end, post being hit, bar being hit, but nobody getting near the goal. And then with almost the last kick of the game, Terry Gibson hits a screamer from the edge of the box, which Gary Kelly doesn't even move, and Wimbledon win 2-1. So that is the end of our League Cup campaign that year, which sadly is almost what we've come to expect with that. they will now go home and we think we're going to do something about this to lift our spirits. But how do you lift your spirits when the team you're going to play is Arsenal? And Arsenal come with their talented team, another team that's touted for possible top of the league status, 24,000 at the game. And William McFall plays an unchanged team. And George Graham's the Arsenal manager now. Team of like Lukic, great goalkeeper, Michael Thomas, talented player, Kenny Sanson, who we get to know, Steve Williams, David O'Leary, Tony Adams, big names in football, David Rocastle, Paul Davis, Alan Smith, centre forward, come from Leicester City, Perry Groves, and Kevin Richardson, who has Geordie connections, and did come back up here, but not those to another place not far from here. Anyway, it's a good game, and Newcastle aren't lying down. They give Arsenal as good as they can get and nailed in at half time. Come out after half time, and both sides hit the woodwork. It's an entertaining football game, and then just to rub it in, right, almost again with the last touch of the ball, Arsenal get a corner which is swung in by Perry Groves, and it's headed in by Alan Smith to give Arsenal a 1-0 win. And it really was a fortunate 1-0 win because we'd given as good as we got in that match. And but the 1-0 win just put the tin hat on it, as it were. So we're now trying to get over that, and we have to get over it by going to an away game at Luton Town. This is a good game for Luton in some ways, but in other ways not, because they Ray Harford's their manager, who's somebody we know, and Les Seeley in goal, Mal Donady, Steve Foster, Ashley Grimes from Manchester United, Darren McDonough, Brian Steen that they've got from Coventry, and Mark Steen, the brother of Brian, the dangerous swinger. 8,000 in the ground at Kenilworth Road. And Gary Kelly's, in goal still, Willie McFall picks virtually an unchanged team. And he brings a new substitute in, a young man called Michael O'Neill from Ireland, from Coleraine. And unfortunately for Michael, I loved a great player and turned out to be a good player and a brilliant manager as well at the moment, I would argue. But he got saddled with because he was so prolific in Ireland and performed very well for us, he got saddled with the title The New George Best. And I don't think that did him any favours, poor Michael, but never mind. He was a talented player. And so that's his first appearance with the team, and he's there as substitute. Luton just take the game off with, basically. 2 minutes, Mark Steen scores. We hang on to that 1-0 till half-time. Then after half-time, Mark Steen scores another one on 62 minutes. The Rhodesian Nojabi for Luton in 75 minutes. And then Brian Steele, 87 minutes, and it's 4-0. But interspersed with that is on the field some really, really bad, what they call in cricket, sledging. The Luton players having a go at the Newcastle players, and in a very personal sort of way. And quite towards the end, one or two incidents happened where the players had to be parted. They were so angry. So anyway, we get rid of Luton and we come home to a home game against Derby County, another team that we like to play against, talented team, and 22,000 at the game. Willie McFall has picked virtually a same team, and Michael O'Neill still the substitute, and he gets on halfway through the second half because Neil MacDonald takes a knock. Derby County, well, managed by none other than Arthur Cox, who we know very well. And Peter Shilton's now moved from Leicester and Southampton. Has come to Derby. And they have Mark Wright as well from Southampton, Ross McLaren, John Gregory from West Ham, Steve Cross from Leicester, Nigel Callaghan come across from Watford, Andy Garnett and Bobby Davison. A talented side, Derby, and obviously known Arthur Cox, a team that won't cave in, won't give in. They'll give it a go, so it's a good game of football. But I've got to say, they could play till next week, and neither of these teams is going to score a goal. I don't even think they got near to hitting the woodwork. Is my memory of the game. So it was 0-0, and we get a point on the board, which starts to pick up our league position just a little bit, because we've been slipping quite badly. So we go away now to London, to Queen's Park Rangers. Not a happy hunting ground for us, but nonetheless we've got to go there. 11,700 in the ground. QPR managed by Jim Smith, who we know very well, and another team with talented players that a mixture of young and talented players from the past who are still playing at a high level, like David Seaman, the old Arsenal goalkeeper, Paul Parker, Manchester United fullback, and a young man introduced as substitute called Gavin Peacock. Now there's a name we conjure with. Terry Fennick, Mark Dennis, and Martin Allen, and they've bought Kevin Brock from West Ham, and of course Wayne Faraday is still there as well, who are two names we get to know quite well. Dean Coney, Johnny Byrne, that talented centre forward, and Gary Bannister. So it's a good QPR side. They're going to give with trouble. Willie McFall has the luxury of a single change at left back, and he plays Kenny Wharton because Brian Tinnion's got a knock. Otherwise, almost the same team. And then another name of a young person he'd given a professional contract to, a tidy footballer called Ian Bogie, and it's his debut. And that an interesting player, Ian. Unfortunately, he's another one got saddled with another title as being the next Gaza. I think that didn't do Ian Bogie any good. But Albert Craig makes a first appearance of the season on the left wing. Interesting game, good football game as always, because the two sides are, both managers are keen to play football. QPR go in the lead just before half time. A lucky rebound of Kenny Wharton by Johnny Byrne's shot, and it goes down as an own goal against Kenny Wharton at 41 minutes. And then second half, Newcastle really try hard. And then on 77 minutes, we get a corner, and up pops Peter Jackson to score one of his few goals for Newcastle United. And we get 1-1. And it stays that way at the end. And there was never any doubt we were going to lose that game. So it's another point. And the big thing is it's an away point, which are in London, which are always hard to come by. Then on the Wednesday of that week, we come back home and we have a home tie in the CMOD Cup. Full members, call it what you like. They're trying so hard to get this competition off the ground. They're trying all kinds. Anyway, Willie McFall plays back to a full team because John Anderson's fit again, and Michael O'Neill's the sub, and very quickly through the first half, he's on because Albert Craig gets injured, and he keeps Ian Bogie in the team as well, which is good news for Ian and for young people. Shrewsbury Town come with no manager. They've just got rid of their old manager. Well, not got rid. He left them and went to a bigger club. But they're a tidy footballing side. One or two names that we know. David Moyes in their back line. David Linningham. Paul Tester, Mickey Brown, Colin Robinson, very dangerous winger. So they're a tidy side, but not one that should trouble Newcastle. And it's going our way. In 3 minutes, Ian Bogie scores a nice, neat little goal after some interplay with Mirandinha. And then just when we think it's going to peter out to an easy 1-0 win, Richard Green from Shrewsbury in 56 minutes equalises and sets all the nerves jangling. And people think, well, this is not going to end well for us. Lo and behold, on almost the last kick of the game, Mirandinha scores from well outside the penalty area, which he's always likely to do. And on 89 minutes, we get 2-1. And that's how it stays. And there was never any chance of Shrewsbury coming back. My only comment about the 89-minute goal is the one I made yesterday, and that is that the dedicated followers of the 10-minute flag in the Gallagher corner, of course, would be home having their tea when that goal went in. They'd have to hear it on the radio or buy a pink to see that result. Anyway, we get rid of Shrewsbury in the Simod Cup, as they call it, and we have a home game against Charlton Athletic. Good football inside Charlton. Their manager, Lenny Lawrence, has a reputation for playing good football. 20,000 at the game. And Willie McFall has, once again, has got almost an unchanged team, except that Ian Bogie's picked up a knock and Michael O'Neill slotted into that place for Ian Bogie. Lenny Lawrence with a team of players who are sort of either on the way up or on the way down. Bob Boulder, the huge goalkeeper, Peter Shirtcliffe, defender, Steve Gritt, Mickey Bennett, Dave Campbell, Colin Walsh, a tricky midfielder, and Andy Jones, a very dangerous centre forward. And that's how it pans out. We kick off and Charlton have the first half. I mean, 6 minutes and Andy Jones, a centre forward, has put them in the lead, and we're struggling to get anything out of this game. John Cornwall scores right on half-time, last kick from across from the left, and makes it 1-1 on 45 minutes. And they come out, but the change in the second half is that Newcastle have woken up and they're really, really having a go at Charlton now. And on 56 minutes, it's no surprise when Mirandinha scores and we get a 2-1, and that's the way it stays. A nice victory to help our league position and satisfy the fans for once, because there's some disgruntlement about some of the things. That's whispers that are coming out the dressing room about unrest, about players arguing in the dressing room, arguing with the manager. Anyway, so we play next the second round of this Simod Cup, as they call it, at Valley Parade. We're away to Bradford, and 8,500 at the game. Bradford City, managed by a former player, Terry Dolan, with one or two big names in it. Steve Staunton from Liverpool, Stuart McCall, John Henry from Leeds, and Mark Leonard. Ron Futcher, a big centre forward who had various times in the league, but for a while played for Wimbledon, of course. Newcastle go with an unchanged team, at least that's the intention. And then lo and behold, just before the game, Glenn Roeder's ill, and they have to bring Kevin Scott in, and that's the team that goes out. First half, awful, 0-0, and it was an awful 0-0. After half time, Bradford looked like they're determined to take this one. And on 77 minutes, Ron Futcher scores. And then on 79 minutes, Greg Abbott scores, and it's 2-0. And it looks like we're out of this cup. Kevin Scott gets with consolation 86 minutes from a header from a corner. But Bradford put we out of the Simod Cup, as they call it. With full men, let's go 2-1. And that's another trophy that we're not going to see. now come to an away game, another away game at Oxford United. And we have some interesting games with Oxford. And this one's interesting as well because within the first half, it's all our game in the first half. The only trouble is we haven't scored any goals. And then on 39 minutes, Neil MacDonald gets the opportunity from the penalty spot because Mirandinha's brought down. And so we go into half-time 1-0. Unfortunately, Oxford United now acquired a goal scorer by the name of Dean Saunders, who we get to know quite well, and the centre forward playing for them by Billy Whitehurst, who was knocking our defenders all over the place, and knocked down from Whitehurst to Saunders, and Oxford are back in it 1-1. However, it doesn't last like that for long. Michael O'Neill shows a bit of his magic and slots in a nice goal at 67 minutes, and then 10 minutes from the end, Mirandinha scores one of his specials, and it's 3-1. So that's a good win in the league for us, and pushes us nicely up the table, and we then come home to a match against Portsmouth. Portsmouth, a promoted team, but a tidy team, and they're certainly challenging. And in the first half, it was their game. I mean, Portsmouth really were taking the game to us. 21,000 at the game. Willie McFall played another unchanged team. No, he doesn't. Darren Jackson stands down because Ian Bogey's fitting again, and up in comes Ian Bogey. Portsmouth managed now by Alan Ball, the World Cup winner, with, again, really good players in the side. Kenny Swain, Paul Hardiman, Kevin Dillon, who we know from down the road, and another name that we know who's a stalwart legend down the road called Kevin Ball, and Barry Horn that they got from Charlton, Ian Baird, who we get to know, and they have introduced a centre forward called Mickey Quinn. And if we're talking about people we know well, there's the one we know well, that's for sure. And it's a good game. Portsmouth give us lots of trouble, and the upshot is that Paul Hardiman, their fullback, scores from a corner. 31 minutes, and Portsmouth are in the lead. And there's a certain amount of nervousness in the Galgate corner. However, after half time, it's clear Newcastle are going to have a go at this, and the centre forward, talented Brazilian centre forward Mirandinha, equalises on 77, and so we get a 1-1 draw, which in some ways for fans was a bit disappointing, but at least it wasn't a home defeat. The next we go away to West Ham. We've have some good games at West Ham, and this is a good game at Upton Park. End-to-end stuff. Stuart Robson gives West Ham the league just before half time, and people think, well, what's the second half going to bring? Well, Newcastle give this game a go in the second half, and it's no surprise when eventually Mirandinha equalises on 78 minutes, and people think, well, we're going to get the 20,000. They think it's going to be a 1-1 draw. Well, they hadn't banked on a little player that made his name not just for West Ham but for Manchester United, called Paul Ince, who started to cause all sorts of problems, and on 80 minutes he scored and gave Portsmouth West Ham a 2-1 win. That West Ham team, well, lots of names: Ray Stewart, Billy Bonds, Liam Brady, Paul Ince, Kevin Keane, Stuart Robson, who they got from Arsenal, and Tony Cottee, who they brought down from Everton. So there's not entirely surprised that we haven't got anything out of the game. The disappointment is that it didn't reward the effort the players put into it. So a 2-1 loss at West Ham isn't the end of the earth. So now we come home to a game against big rivals, Manchester United, and it's the crowd's anticipating a good game, a hard game. 27,000 at the game. Willie McFall plays his unchanged team, except that Ian Bogie has to stand down and Darren Jackson comes in. And it's Alex Ferguson, still the manager of Manchester United. They've got a new goalkeeper in Chris Turner, then names that we know, Kevin Moran, and they've just bought a centre-back from Norwich called Steve Bruce, Mike Duxbury, Colin Gibson, Brian McNair, Remy Moses, Brian Robson, of course, Gordon Strachan, Norman Whiteside, and Peter Davenport. A very talented side. Well, it was when Newcastle weren't going to lie down and they were going to fight for everything in this game, and it was a very entertaining game. And just before half-time, we get a corner and two should have dropped over Glenn Roeder. And on 44 minutes, he puts the 1-0 in the lead. So we go in at half-time with a 1-0 lead. Second half is ding-dong. Both sides hitting the woodwork, both sides having chances, but neither being able to stick the ball in the net. So we very, very gratefully end up with a 1-0 victory against Manchester United. And to say that everybody's happy about that's putting it mildly. So having to celebrate that, unfortunately, we can't celebrate too long because we've got an away game at Liverpool. 45,000 at Anfield. Willie McFall has the luxury of the same side, except that halfway through the second half, Ian Bogie goes on for Darren Jackson as substitute. And then Kenny Dalglish, well, his team of all-stars, that's all you can describe them, Grobler, Alan Hansen, Steve Nicol, Barry Venison, Gary Gillespie, Ray Houghton, Steve Mahon, Ronnie Whelan, Peter Beardsley, John Barnes, and John Aldridge. A really talented team. There's no question about that. Well, it's all Liverpool. That's the only way to describe it. They go in 1-0 at half time. It could have been 5. Steve Mahon scores on 4 minutes, and then after half time, Liverpool just set about Newcastle, and John Aldridge gets a penalty on 48 minutes and dispenses it to equalise, and then repeats the doors on 76 minutes to make it 2-1 to 3 to Liverpool, and then on 88 minutes, Ray Houghton makes it 4. So we get well and truly beaten, and a game where we never looked like winning the game, or even being in the game, to be perfectly honest. A little bit out of the press. A Barnes corner was competed for by both Roeder and Gillespie. With a clash of heads, both lay prone and the ball went to Mahon. The referee allowed play to continue long enough for Mahon to cut into the box and beat Kelly with a fine low drive. The referee was a man called Key, who could be controversial, is putting it mildly, and it's clear that the tone of that says that the press reporter is surprised that they were allowed to go on. They wouldn't have been now, of course, with head injuries, but anyway, it didn't matter. We got well and truly thrashed off Liverpool, and no good pretending otherwise. We then have to try and pull our socks up and go to Nottingham Forest on the following Friday night, and for an away game, and 29,000 at the game. Brian Clough got his team of all-stars out: Stuart Pearce, Des Walker, Neil Webb, Brian Rice, Tommy Grainer, Leigh Glover, and Gary Kelly, is in goal with Anderson, Wharton, McCreary, Jackson, Rhoda, McDonald, Gascoigne, Goddard, Mirandinia and Cornwall, a team that McFall's virtually played the whole season, give or take one or two changes due to injury mostly. But it's a good game, and it's a game that Newcastle set off as though they want to win it, which has got everybody pleased. And on 26 minutes, it's no surprise when Paul Gascoigne puts with 1-0 in the lead. Second half, Forest come out and seem determined to turn the thing over, and lo and behold, it's end-to-end stuff. And but Newcastle hang on quite nicely, and then there's a long ball which is hopeful more than anything. But Mirandina gets on the end of it, and that's it. Nobody in the Forest defence, Stuart Pearce, Des Walker, or anybody is going to catch him in full flow. And on 86 minutes, he makes it 2-0. So we get a very, very tidy 2-0 win away from home, which again is pushing us up to the right end of the table. We come home next to a home game with Sheffield Wednesday. And as I've said in the previous matches with these, always a tough game. We came up together, and we seem to be stuck together in the league as well. And we have this game against them at St James's. The crowd up to 26,000 now, with a couple of reasonable results. The crowd are getting a bit more confident. Willie McFall plays an unchanged team, but with Albert Craig as a substitute and Brian Tinian as a substitute. And Miradina gets a knock, and Albert Craig has to come on for him. It's first half is abysmal, so the way to describe it. They could have played or if they played like that all the time, no result would have happened. It would have been 0-0 all the way. But I don't know whether it was something that McFall said in the dressing room at half time, but when they came out after half time, they really went for it and give Sheffield a game. And the star of it was Paul Goddard. He took the game by the scruff of the neck, and with support from Gascoigne and McDonald, gave Sheffield lots of trouble. So it was no surprise on 46 minutes when Goddard put one in the lead. And then on 60 minutes, Brian Marwood, who's fixture in the Sheffield Wednesday team, Howard Wilkinson's team, and he scores from the left wing and 60 minutes, and it's 1-1. And then Paul Goddard decides to take a solo goal on 67 minutes, and suddenly we're 2-1. But then lo and behold, 70 minutes, Lee Chapman, the big blonde centre forward that plays for Sheffield Wednesday, equalises. So we go to 2-2. Interested in this match is some of the names that we know in this match. Nigel Pearson, Gary Mexon, Mark Proctor, who was Middlesbrough, Brian Marwood, of course. And on the alongside Lee Chapman in the middle is Colin West, who they bought from our neighbours down the road. So a 2-2 draw. It's a bit disappointing because people hope we'd get a home victory, but it's still pushing me in the right direction to up the league. So we're now into the stage of FA Cup, and it's the third round of the FA Cup, and we're drawn at home against Crystal Palace. 20,000 at the game. Willie McFall has the luxury of an unchanged team, and he's able to play Michael O'Neill again and put Albert Craig on as a substitute with Ian Bogie. Crystal Palace, Steve Coppell, ex-Man United manager, is now the manager, their player rather, now the manager of Crystal Palace. And they have some good talented players, some who are on their way out and some on their way up. And one of them is a young man called Alan Pardew, would you believe? And alongside Alan Pardew in midfield is Jeff Thomas, who is a really talented player who's career was blighted with all sorts of weird injuries and illnesses, unfortunately. Also in that midfield is a young man called Neil Redfern, who we know as a coach up here at Newcastle. And they've introduced a young centre forward called Ian Wright, who's a star at the moment. And the videos of him and Shearer together are quite amusing. So they've got a good side, and they're not going to lie down. It's a good football game to watch. I remember this one quite well. It looks both sides are struggling to get a shot on goal, though, even though they're playing quite well. But then on 44 minutes, just before half time, there's a solo goal from Paul Gascoigne, and we're 1-0 in the lead. And the second half was good, but nobody was going to score, and we end up winning that third round cup tie, 1-0 against Palace. And that any cup win for Newcastle fans is a good one. And so we now return to the league and hope that we can get a result in the league. However, we return to the league, but there's a slight interruption for guess what? On the Wednesday night, we go to Queen of the South and play Queen of the South in a testimonial match, and win 4-0. But why they do this, I don't know. But it's irregular. It happens all the time. Anyway, we come back from Queen of the South. Incidentally, Anthony Loma plays in that game and gets a goal as well. Another youngster getting a chance by Willie McFall. We come home to a home league game against Tottenham Hotspur, and 25,000 at this game. Nobody's expecting miracles. They know this is going to be tough because Tottenham are playing out of their skin at the moment. Willie McFall's got a luxury of an unchanged team. However, halfway through the first half, Mirandinia's injured, and the substitutes Anthony Loma. Anthony comes on to make his debut in the first team, which was great. And young Michael O'Neill, of course, is still in the team and showing his talents. Tottenham come, the manager now is Terry Venables, still a very talented squad. Tony Parks, Chris Fairclough, Terry Fenwick, Chris Hughton, who we know very well, Michael Thomas, Mitchell Thomas rather, Gary Mabbitt, Paul Allen, Osvaldo Ardiles, the Argentinian, Chris Waddle, Paul Moran and Clive Allen. Good game, an entirely good game, but taken by the scruff of the neck by one individual, Paul Gascoigne. Paul Gascoigne played Spurs on his own that day. He was just unbelievable. And 39 minutes he gave with the lead. And Spurs huffed and puffed, but never looked like they were going to get back in it. And then on 56 minutes in the second half, again, Paul Gascoigne pops up and does one of his mazy dribbles and ends with a tap in 56 minutes, and we're 2-0 in the lead. And people rubbing their eyes in disbelief that we're actually going to beat Tottenham, this side that's just been touted to be possible league champions. And so it's great. Everybody goes home happy, and we get a nice lift in the league off that win. So next we're to the next round of the FA Cup, round 4, and we're drawn at home to Swindon, and people think that this is it's the 4th round, and looks like we should make progress to the next round. And reflected in the fact that it's the Cup again, 29,000 at the game, and Willie McFall has an unchanged team. Mirandinia's fit again, comes back in, and Swindon Town come with a manager, very famous manager called Lou Macari, ex Manchester United star and Scotland star, and there's a mixture of players like all these teams from the lower leagues, mixture of young players coming up and older players going down. And one or two names we know, like Colin Calderwood, who was a coach with us for a while under Chris Hughton, Chris Kamara of television fame, Jimmy Quinn and Dave Bamber, two good forward, dangerous forwards in that day. And so Swindon come and for a little while they give as good as they get, but then after about half an hour, the game really goes to Newcastle. And on 34 minutes, Darren Jackson scores a lovely goal, an individual goal. And then 45 minutes, just on half time, Gaza scores a nice goal, and it's 2-0. After the second half, start the second half, it's clear Newcastle are going to have a go at this, and they do. And it's Gascoigne again is instrumental. Michael O'Neill on 62 minutes, Paul Goddard on 87 minutes, and Gascoigne on 77 minutes, and then Goddard on 87 minutes. Makes it a 5-0 win, which is a super victory for Newcastle, and sends the home's fans away very happy. And it's sigh of relief, I think, is how to describe it, because other cup competitions were just not doing it. Next, we're away to Wimbledon. Wimbledon, whether it's home or away, is going to be a tough game. 10,000 at Plough Lane, and Bobby Gould's still a manager. Dave Beston's still a goalie. Brian Gale, Andy Thorne, Terry Phelan, Laurie Sanchez, Vinnie Jones, Dennis Wise, Terry Gibson, John Fashanu, and Alan Cork, the crazy gang they used to call them, and not surprising. Willie McFall's got the pleasure of selling in an unchanged team. Mirandinia's fit again. He keeps Michael O'Neill in the side, and because Glenn Roder's back. An interesting game, but in terms of goals, they could still be playing now and they would never have scored. 0-0, and grateful for the point, but not the best game for spectators, because they could have played, as I say, they could have been playing now, and I don't think they would have scored. We pause as we have another friendly. Yes, Monaco is touring the UK and want to come to Newcastle, and come to Newcastle they do, and beat us 2-1 in what is quite a nice game, but it shows what the crowd shows what they think of it. 6,000 in the ground for a team like Monaco is ridiculous, but never mind, that's what they do, and people have other things to think about. So we get rid of that friendly, and we come home to a home game against Norwich, and having had the run of results that we've had, win at Tottenham, win against Tottenham, win against Swindon, 2-2, and 0-0 draw at Wimbledon. People are happy, hoping that we'll get something out of this game against Norwich. Well, sadly, 21,000 at the game. Willie McFall has a unchanged team, and Dave Stringer's now the Norwich manager, former player, and they've got some changes because they've sold Bruce to Manchester United, but otherwise they've got names that we remember, like Kevin Drinkle, who always a pain for us, Robert Fleck, who they bring into the game, Dale Gordon, Rule Fox, of course, who we get to know very well, Mark Bowen, who's and Ian Butterworth taking the place of Bruce, and it starts off end-to-end stuff. It's 100 miles an hour, and Robert Fleck, unfortunately, gets to the end of a flick from Kevin Drinkle, the player who always causes us bother, and puts Norwich up 1-0 after 3 minutes. Paul Gascoigne on 19 minutes equalises with a nice individual goal, and we go in at half time 1-1, and it's a good football game, is what I'm saying. After the half time, though, we the game gets taken over by a man I've mentioned more than once, Kevin Drinkle. He just takes the game by the scruff of the neck. And on 58 minutes, he gives them 2-1. 86 minutes, he makes it 3-1. So we go down to Norwich 3-1 at home, which isn't a result that the Gallagher faithful like. In fact, it's a poor result. So we're now into the 5th round of the FA Cup, and people at home thinking, well, is this going to be a run? Or and so we go to Wimbledon. Willie McFall's got the luxury of an unchanged team, puts Michael O'Neill on the substitutes bench, and Bobby Gould has all his stars of today and yesterday to pick from, with Dave Besant, Brian Gale, Andy Thorne, Sanchez, Vinnie Jones, Dennis Wise, Laurie Cunningham, Terry Gibson, and Justin Fashionable. 6 minutes, Terry Gibson gives them the lead, and that's the way it stays right till half time. And then 56 minutes, Brian Gale scores, and it looks like they're going to take the match. And lo and behold, Neil MacDonald on 57 minutes scores with a free kick, and we're 2-1 and getting excited. But just John Fashionable rather makes the end of that with an 85th minute goal to send Wimbledon through to the next round 3-1. So that's the end of what FA Cup run, which I wish I could say it was a surprise, but it's the way we've been playing at the moment. We go home to a home game against Chelsea, and they're not going to be easy. Chelsea are playing out of their skin at the moment. Only 18,000 at the game, though, which reflects the cup defeat and etc. with Newcastle fans. Willie McFall's got a almost unchanged team, but he has to play Darren Jackson in the team and drop John Cornwell. And it's a tidy game. Chelsea come. John Holland's still the manager. They've got a new goalkeeper called Roger Freestone. Sadly, Roger doesn't last long with Chelsea because he has a series of ricks, to put them mildly. But they still have their talented players like Tony DeRigo, Mickey Hazard, Pat Nevin, Kerry Dixon, Colin West, who has now come from Sheffield Wednesday to Chelsea. 2 transfers in less than half a season for that lad. Roy Wiggery is a dangerous winger that they've introduced, and they come full of confidence, but they hadn't counted on a certain Brazilian called Mirandinha, because this was a game that was his. From the kickoff, you could see he was up for it. 10 minutes he scores, 31 minutes he scores, and we go on 2-0 at half time. And Chelsea nowhere to be seen. They do get back in it as the game wears on, and then 67 minutes, Kevin Wilson gives them hope, make it 2-1. But shortly after that, 73 minutes, Paul Gascoigne individual goal, and we beat Chelsea 3-1. And a great relief to everybody, and pushing up the league again quite nicely. Next game is an away game to Southampton. 13,000 at the Dell. Southampton, managed by Chris Nicholl. They've changed their goalkeeper, and their goalkeeper's on that picture. Budgie Burridge, John Burridge has gone to Southampton. And they've still got Kevin Bond, Derek Statham, Jimmy Case, Glenn Cockrell, Andy Townsend. Matt Letizia starting to play out of his skin and managed to get himself into the England team. Colin Clark and Danny Wallace, a talented Southampton team. We give as good as we get in the first half. It's 0-0. But then just after half time, we allow Colin Clark to sneak through and put Southampton in the league. And looks like that's how it's going to stay. Then a piece of magic from Michael O'Neill, our Irish player, on 84 minutes, and it's 1-1, and we got a 1-1. What was good about this one is they didn't sit back on the 1-1. They actually had a go at Southampton to try and try and get a victory, which gives them credit. So we're actually sitting quite nicely in the league now. We're above halfway and not looking over our shoulder at relegation, that sort of thing. So the next game is an away game to Everton at Goodison Park. 27,000 at the game. Colin Harvey manager, and he's got a very strong team out. Neville Southall's back in goal. Gary Stevens, Pat Van and Howe, Dave Watson, Neil Adams, Alan Harper, Neil Poynton, Kevin Sheedy, Trevor Stephen, Wayne Clark and Graham Sharp. Willie McFall has an unchanged team, except Darren Jackson's a sub, and midway through the second half, Darren Jackson has to go on for David McCreary. First half, we're in it until 32 minutes, and Wayne Clark scores for Everton, puts them 1-0 at half time, and that's how it stays. Second half, it's end stuff, and we do try in this one, but neither side could score, so we end up with a 1-0 defeat at Everton. But that's no disgrace because they're being touted as the champions elect, as it were. So we have an interlude. Thursday we play Morton in Scotland for a testimonial match, and on the Monday night at St James's Park we play a testimonial with Alnwick Town, would you believe? And Willie McFall obviously takes it seriously because the scorers are all first teamers, Jackson, Anderson, Michael O'Neill, Ian Bogie, Robinson, and we beat Alnwick 6-1. But doing this in the middle of a league campaign always I just find intriguing. And all the managers have done it. It isn't just Willie McFall. So we get those out of the way, and on this Saturday we come back down to earth with an away trip to Arsenal, which is never going to be easy. And the fact that this time not just not easy, that they're playing very well. George Graham's team all fit. Lukic, Lee Dixon, Nigel Winterburn, a fullback pairing that lasts a long time. Michael Thomas, Gus Caesar, Tony Adams, David Rocastle, Alan Smith, Perry Groves and Martin Hayes. And the substitute on that day is none other than Niall Quinn, who we everybody knows very well. Willie McFall has almost an unchanged team, but he drops John Cornwell and brings in Paul Stevenson. And it's a good game, good football game. 29 minutes, Perry Groves scores for Arsenal, take them in at half time at 1-0. But after the half time, will Newcastle give as good as they can get? And it's no surprise when Paul Goddard scores a nice individual goal with a hard drive from outside the box, and 77 minutes, and it's 1-1. So we come back from Highbury with a nice point, and again cementing were very positive league position. We then come home to home game against Coventry City, and bearing in mind that we beat them away, everybody thinks we're going to do it again. Well, 20,000 at the game. Willie McFall has tries to play the same team, but unfortunately Paul Stevenson gets a knock, so he plays Ian Bogie instead of Paul Stevenson. Coventry come with the usual side. John Sillett, the ex-Chelsea fullback's the manager now. Steve Sedgley, Brian Kilcline's their centre-back. Dean Emerson, David Smith, Nicky Pickering, Gary Bannister. Cyril Regis, that dangerous centre-forward, and David Speedy, the nippy winger, playing as well. They have also in a team Dave Smith, who floated with Newcastle for a little while as a coach. And we have a first half which is 0-0 and an abysmal 0-0. Neither even got no close to scoring, not just scoring, having a shot would have been something, but they didn't even do that. But both dressing rooms must have been busy at half time, because after half time, it was a different game, like two different teams. And on 47 minutes, just after half time, David Smith scores for Coventry. 55 minutes, Michael O'Neill scores for Newcastle United. And then then Michael O'Neill again, with a really piece of talented football, makes it 2-1 to us. And then on 75 minutes, David Speedy equalises. So we get 2-2 against Coventry, which, as Coventry were playing well and so on, isn't entirely a bad result, but it would have been a better one if we'd got a win. Next one is a home game against Luton Town, and the message in the press is that there's a bit of a grudge match here because of what happened at Luton when they beat us 4-0 down there, and there was sledging on the pitch by the Luton players, denigrating the Newcastle players. And so the crowd's interested to see what happened. And certainly, I'm not saying that the Chronicle whipped it up, but certainly the Chronicle made a good bit of interest out of the fact that there was some feeling between these two teams. Willie McFall plays an unchanged team, and this by one exception. At left back, he's got Brian Tinian back, who's been out injured for a while. Luton come, Ray Harford's still the manager, with exactly the team that played at Kenilworth Road, with Seeley, Becker, Mal Donaghy, Steve Foster, Ashley Grimes, Darren McDonough, Robert Wilson, Mick Hartford, who we get to know, and then Mark Steen, their centre forward. Well, this is Michael O'Neill's game. Michael O'Neill took this game by the scruff of the neck from the start, and it was always going to be his game. 15 minutes he scores, 25 minutes he scores, and we go in at 2-0 at half time. Then after half time, 62 minutes, we score, and then 81 minutes, and we reverse the 4-0 that we had down at Luton. But towards the end, when we were 4-0 up, Newcastle players started to take the mickey, and there was lots of keepy-uppies, and there's Kenny Wharton really taking the mickey by just sitting on the ball and not letting anybody have it. At that stage, the crowd had joined a bit of it, but it went on so long. I mean, it was about nearly 10 minutes of keepy-uppies by Roder, even by Gary, the goalkeeper. I mean, Gary Kelly was playing keepy-uppy and heady-uppy in the penalty area, and the fans suddenly got sick of it and reminded them that there was a game to play, and they carried on. But it resulted from the bad feeling in the very first game. But as I say, Kenny Wharton sitting on the ball really wrapped it up. No doubt about that. We now away to Derby County at the baseball ground, and Arthur Cox now got Derby playing well. They've had a number of wins. Peter Shilton in goal, of course. Now Mark Wright, Rob Hindmarsh, John Gregory. Arthur Cox slowly but surely building a steady side. Buys Frank Stapleton from Manchester United, and Willie McFall has the luxury of playing an unchanged team, but unfortunately, midway through the second half, he has to make two substitute changes. John Colwell has to come on, and Paul Stevenson goes off, and then Neil MacDonald gets an injury, and Willie McFall's put Mirandina on the bench just to give him a run out after injury, and Mirandina comes on on the thing. We upset Derby. Michael O'Neill again on form. 35 minutes, he puts 1-0 in the lead. But after half-time, Derby take the game by the scruff of the neck. And Phil G, the talented young winger, on 52 minutes, and Gary Micklethwaite on 71 minutes, make it 2-1, and that's how it stayed. We lose 2-1 at Derby. Not the end of the world, though. And we now go home to a match against Queen's Park Rangers. Everybody's expecting a good game, but reflection of what fans think about it is in the crowd, isn't it? 18,000, which is quite disappointing. A lot of that, I'm sure, is, by this time in this season, there are lots of tales coming out the dressing room about fights between players, fights with the manager and players. A really bad, so the papers say, a really bad disagreement between the manager and Paul Gascoigne, and other players, and it's just an atmosphere. The fans know nothing about that really, except the rumours and what gets in the papers and the rumours that people pick up around the town. Anyway, we play at QPR, 18,000 at the game, and it's Michael O'Neill again, as far as we're concerned. However, QPR, David Kerslake, the new forward, scores for them 11 minutes with a penalty, and 27 minutes Michael O'Neill scores the equaliser. Another good goal from Michael, playing in an unchanged Newcastle team. In Jim Smith's team now, he's got one or two of the new names. He's still got Seaman, Paul Parker, Alan MacDonald, Martin Allen, David Kerslake, Wayne Faraday's still there, Mark Falco, and a young man called Trevor Francis has joined QPR then, and is a talented player. 1-1 is the result. It's enough to keep we're going the right direction in the league, and we got another home game coming up, so we get the chance to cement that position if we're are able to against Watford, and Watford now managed by Steve Harrison, an ex-player, and all the former London players in the team, like Nigel Gibbs, Wilf Ruston, who's ex-Sunderland as well. Glyn Hodges now suddenly appears against Newcastle. Gary Porter, Rick Holden, Ian Roberts, and Stuart Rimmer. Glyn Hodges, of course, who left us because he couldn't stand the pressure, obviously finds the pressure in London a lot more to his liking. 16,000 at the game, which is very poor, but reflects on how the people feel about the club at the moment, I think. Willie McFord brings Paul Stevenson back in, and talented winger Paul. I sometimes think we sold Paul too soon, but never mind. It's our game from the off, and the man that's sort of conducting the band is Michael O'Neill again, showing his real talent. In 28 minutes, is no surprise when he puts you in the lead. Go in half time at 1-0. Second half, we come out, and it's clear they're up for this. And 54 minutes, Kenny Wharton scores a goal again from a corner, but not a header. A knockdown and a tap in, knockdown from Paul Goddard and a tap in. And then on 79 minutes, another corner, and Brian Tinian scores a rare goal for it, and we run out 3-0 winners against Watford, which is a good win. Everybody's more than happy about that. So we're now heading to the last few games. Then suddenly that we're interrupted by another cup game, the Mercantile Cup, and we're in a group with Liverpool and Tranmere Rovers. Well, we do 0-0 at Liverpool, but lose on penalties. We then do.
Oh, we won on penalties because
we won. Sorry, yes, we won on penalties. Sorry, that's right. And interesting, this match they got big crowds, and we went to Tranmere and went and threw the thing away by losing 2-0.
It was at Wembley over a weekend, George. It was the
right.
Mercantile Credit Classic.
Okay, that answers why I've been struggling to see when it puts an N in. It means neutral, and I couldn't think where the neutral stadium was.
It was over Wembley, a weekend, and it was at Wembley. Right. Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. That clears that up for me as well. Anyway, it doesn't do with any good at the end of the day, and we come home to we go away to the return leg with Watford.
Quite unusual, that, isn't it? Back-to-back games against
absolutely teams. Yes. I mean, the only time that's happened in the past has been over the Christmas holiday when they used to try and do the derbies over Christmas. But yes, I mean, we're only a week away since we played them at St James's Park. However, we go and we've got to face them again. Teams are almost identical. Well, ours is, except that Anthony Loma gets on as a substitute late in the game for Mirandinia. And Watford have now bought Jeff Thomas from Wolves, from Crystal Palace rather, who come via Wolves. But that was really his last swap, because shortly after that, Jeff Thomas went out of football. So it's a typical end of season game. There's nothing, seems to be nothing in it. Kenny Jackett gets a goal on 14 minutes. It looks like Watford's going to stroll out of the game with a 1-0 win. But we get a corner, and Paul Goddard causes all sorts of kerfuffle in the penalty box, and the ball drops to John Anderson, and he rifles in a shot from the just inside the penalty area. So a 1-1 draw is a good result for us. It's keeping we in the right part of the league. We're now at Charlton in London again on the Saturday, and we hopefully might get something out of Charlton. Well, we don't. Charlton 8,000 at the game. Lenny Lawrence's team's really up for this one, and he's playing a young midfielder again, and as he had most of the season, called Rob Lee. But the man who takes this game is the left winger called Garth Crooks. Garth Crooks just from the off is just unplayable. And on 6 and 10 minutes, he puts Charlton 2-0 in the lead, and we never recover. We try our best, but don't really get back into this game. And despite having an unchanged team, we just don't do it. And it 2-0 loss to Charlton in London is sad, but at this stage of the season, hardly surprising. We're home now to Oxford United, who we should take out of this game, because they're struggling at the bottom. Oxford now have got a new manager called Mark Lawrenson, and their team of has-beens and upcoming players is quite a tidy one. They've still got Dean Saunders, though, who's a dangerous player. Robbie Mustoe, who used to play for the Borough, is in that team. So they're still a tidy side. However, this is a game where Anthony Loma gets a proper debut, and on 5 minutes he's a hero, because he scores the opening goal. And then Michael O'Neill on 55 minutes, Paul Goddard on 56, make it 3-0, and on 87, just before the end, Oxford get a consolation. Another game where Michael O'Neill was outstanding. So that really is pushing our league position nicely. So then we're off to an away game to Portsmouth, which was our last away game of the season. And people don't know what to expect out of this. Portsmouth are playing well, and 12,000 at Fratton Park. Alan Ball's still their manager, and Mickey Quinn's still in that team, and Kevin Dillon, Kevin Ball, names we know. Willie McFall has an almost unchanged team, except that John Caldwell comes in for John Bailey, who drops to the substitutes bench. And Kevin Scott, makes an appearance for Glenn Roeder, who's got a knock. Good game, good football game. Kevin Scott from a corner on 12 minutes puts we in the lead, and we go in at half time 1-0. Second half, it's ding dong end to end, and it could be any side going into the lead. And then on 51 minutes, Anthony Loma from from a nice pass by Paul Gascoigne, makes it 2-0. But then on 53 minutes, just as if to remind us he was there, Mickey Quinn scores, and it's 2-1, and the last few minutes is quite exciting. So it's a 2-1 win at Portsmouth. Last game of the season is a home game against West Ham, who are riding high, so we're going to have to be up for this one. And Willie McFall once again has the luxury of almost an unchanged team. Paul Goddard's got a knock, so Ian Bogey's slotted in. West Ham, John Lyle, the manager. Predictable team: Julian Dix, Tony Gale, Alan Dickens, Stuart Robson, Mark Ward, Leroy Rosenier, and Tony Cotty. A nice football side, and they give us a fright. On 11 minutes, West Ham score, and everybody gets a bit twitchy. On 56 minutes after the second half, Newcastle looked like they were going to take the game over, and they did, thanks to Michael O'Neill, who again just took the game by the scruff of his neck. And on 56 minutes, he equalises. And on 67 minutes, he's about to get another goal when fullback Julian Dix, who has had a reputation at West Ham for being a hard man, comes sliding in just as he's shooting. And of course, the ball loops over the goalkeeper for an own goal, but it should have been Michael O'Neill's goal. So that's Michael O'Neill showing his talent and us getting in into the league and into a position which at the season, if people had been told that we were going to end up 8th, they would have laughed in your face, because all the pundits were saying no chance. That's not likely. And we end the season with three friendlies, would you believe? Well, you would believe, wouldn't you? This is Newcastle United. Some nice action pictures of Gaza, and now that's goes to the Wimbledon game, because there was some nastiness in that at one of the games. Mirandina was accused of not shaking hands with Besant and the Wimbledon captain, and there certainly was some harsh words said. So for the return game, that's posters start to circulate that's what Mirandina was going to do to Dave Besant. So yes, 8th in the league, and it looked like Willie McFall was consolidating, but he was dealing with a very, very unhappy dressing room, and sadly a dressing room which was going to be short of Paul Gascoigne very soon, because he'd had enough, and he wasn't alone. I mean, as you'll see in the next season, how we start quite different to where we were in this season.
Three more friendlies, did you say, at the end of the season?
Yes, yeah. We played a friendly at Whitley Bay, and then a friendly against Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica. Were touring the UK, and they played a tournament in London, and the London grounds, and we became part of it. And we beat Trinidad and Tobago 1-0 and drew 1-1 with Jamaica. But the crowd's derisory, 8,000 at Trinidad and Tobago, 1,000 against Jamaica. I mean, makes you wonder what the point, other than giving the West Indians a run out, and that's the strips for the season. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Great stuff, George, as always. Fantastic to take a trip down memory lane. I look forward to seeing you on the next show, mate. Take care.
And me too. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at skipsandbins.com or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces Handmade in Cumbria. You can order them from their website, mrvickys.co.uk, or by telephoning 01768 210 102. A big thanks also to New Workwear. You can find them at newworkwear.com. They're an agile and dedicated workwear provider. Welcome back as well to United Travel. They are a UK coaches firm, and they are based in the Northeast. They've got 2024 tours, and you can contact them on 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Email info@unitedgrouptravel.com, and they've got a website which is unitedgrouptravel.com. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. Big thanks to them for their sponsorship. Big thanks as well to Media Arts, and they supply all the video technology. If you want to become a member and get a cup, a pen, a membership card, and a scarf, then get your smartphone and put it over this QR code. It will take you straight to the membership pack. It's a £25 one-off fee. You can also go to NUFC Matters website and search membership pack to book today. If you want to help the channel, then subscribe to it by hitting the subscribe button. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video and click share to share to your other social media. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. Don't forget, we help the food bank on this channel. If you want to do so virtually, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. The Alan Shearer raffle is back on. 150 tickets, £1 a ticket. Win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball. Enter today at nufcmatters.com. We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.